Hey friend, Kris here. I help people cultivate energy, restore balance, and live an inspired life. Today's topic, how to understand nutrition facts by reading food labels. Doesn't sound like the most interesting topic, but it's a really important one because have you ever went into a grocery store with the intention of buying healthy food and judged your food by the cover? What I mean is, let's pick on the smart food over here. So, maybe you think that this is the smart food because, well, that's what it's called, or that it has no trans fat, it has low sodium, it has reduced fat, it's non-GMO, so on and so forth. There's so much marketing that goes into food that a lot of times it's just easier to judge the food by its cover. But it's sort of like books. If you're gonna read a book, then you're gonna want to also take a look inside the cover. You're gonna wanna look at the description. You wanna know if this book is good for you or not good for you. So I really think we need to do the same thing with our food. And I can tell you, my friend, that it wasn't always that way for me. I found food labels very confusing. I used to bring in my calculator when I was preparing for bodybuilding shows and everything had to be so finite. I'd bring in my calculator and I'd calculate everything on the fly. And my shopping trips took a couple of hours and I don't have that time anymore. And in fact, I learned a new way of doing it that's a lot more time friendly, and it only requires 3 easy steps. So let's get right into it. I'm going to show you 3 easy steps to simplify reading food labels so you can truly understand nutrition facts and make the determination, is this food good for me or not good for me? Thumbs up or thumbs down. Let's pick on the smart guy over here. This is the Smart Food Movie Night Butter Popcorn. It sounds really interesting, that's for sure. It's got my taste buds acting up on me here. But let's just find out if this food's gonna get the thumbs up or thumbs down. So step number 1, let's figure out here if the serving size, okay, is gonna be listed. And it always is, and it's right up here. So this is 3 cups. This is 3 cups, a serving size. So we really need to pay attention to that, because if we don't, then everything to follow, or step number 2, I'm going to show you in a moment, will be completely inaccurate. So having 6 cups essentially doubles all of the formula that I'm going to show you below here. So we have to really determine, if it's going to be 3 cups, it has to be 3 cups, or about 3 fistfuls. That's equivalent to 3 cups. So that's the first thing. And now we can always play with this too. Maybe we want to have 4 cups, or maybe we want to cut back a little bit and have 2 cups. We can always do that. But first we need to know what is the baseline. And the baseline for this food is 3 cups. That's a serving size. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, we need to look at the daily values. Now, what I used to do is I used to look at all of these numbers here. How many milligrams of sodium does it have? How many grams of carbohydrates? And that might work for you if you're the type that's actually looking at food labels, but that's really hard to determine. Is this a food to keep or is it a food not to keep? And the daily value, which is this column, which is rarely used by most people on the far right over here, makes that process quite easy. And it does that because it determines all of your macros, your fats, your protein, and your carbs, what percentage of your daily intake this food is according to that serving size. So for example, the fats in here are 26% of my daily value, okay, of fat. And it also breaks it down into saturated and trans fats. And we're at 12% here. Now, here is the formula, okay? We call this the 5 to 15 rule, okay? So that's basically the spectrum or the range that you always want to be in when it comes to your macros or your carbs, your fats, your proteins, or what they call the DV, or the daily value. So that's the range. Now, if you're trying to get a little less of something, maybe it's carbohydrates right now you're trying to cut back on, for example, then it's going to be closer to the 5% or the lower end of the range. Now, maybe it's something you want to get a little bit more of. We all know how important fiber is in our diet, so maybe we want to get higher and closer to that 15%, or maybe even beyond that. So it's called the 5 to 15 rule, and that's the way we can determine the DV and where we want to fall within that. So let's go back to the DV for the other macronutrients here, looking at carbohydrates. So we've got 28 grams. We don't even need to look at that anymore because we have an easier way of looking at it. It's 9%. So as you can see, 9% falls into that 5 to 15 range. It's sort of in the upper middle. So, that would get a thumbs up here, assuming that, you can handle 9% carbohydrates per serving. Now, that's also broken into fiber and sugars. Now, this is where I like to switch things up a little bit because here's the problem. There is no DV for sugar. And that's because the Dietitian Board of Canada, works for Food Canada, has not determined how much sugar we should have each day. There's lots of guesswork behind that, but studies are still ongoing and they really haven't determined what that number should be. What is that safe zone, the safe amount of sugar that we can ingest without any health consequences? Because that's what the DV is all about. And I want to clear this up right now. The DV, or the daily value, and all those percentages on that right column aren't about you losing weight. It's about your health. It's about preventing preventable health risks, diseases, cardiovascular disease, heart disease, cancer, and all of these common illnesses that we have in our society today. It's all about decreasing the risk. And they've done years and years of worldwide studies to show that the DV, the ranges of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats have to be within that 5 to 15% in order for us to maximize our health. And when we go, beyond that, that's when we could be getting into some preventable health problems. So moving on here, back to the smart food popcorn, we can look at the protein, which is at 4 grams. Now, protein is not listed neither, and the reason behind that is the same as sugar, in the sense that they don't have a number because they really haven't researched it, because they've determined that we're getting enough protein in our diet as it is. Now, some people that are on a high protein diet would disagree with that. And for them, they probably know how many grams of protein that they're going to want per day. And they're going to have to track that manually or on maybe a food app, a Fitness Pal, or maybe it's Fat Secret. There's plenty of them out there to do that. But for us everyday folk, we don't really need to worry about that because we're easily going to get the 10 to 25%, which is what the DV is based on. That 10 to 25% of all of our calories, should come from protein, and that's where that healthy range is. Now, of course, some people go beyond that. That's okay. That might be the right fuel blend for you. Everybody's different. But there's enough studies that show that 10 to 25% of protein from your calories is where you should be to prevent health problems. Now, back to that sugar fiber thing, the easiest way to do that, to figure out how much sugar you should have or shouldn't have, I call it the high 5, low 5. High 5, low 5. So high 5, we want to have more than 5 grams of fiber. And low 5, we want to have less than 5 grams of sugar. That's not easy, my friend. It's very challenging, actually. You'll see that with a lot of the grain products. If it's cereal or bread, you're going to have that fiber and sugar always listed together, which is really convenient. But again, as I said, there's going to be no daily value for sugar. So I just do the high 5, low 5 here. And in this case, you can see we've got 5 grams of fiber. So it sort of hits that minimum 5 grams of fiber that we want, but it has no grams of sugar, so it's definitely under 5 grams of sugar. We get a thumbs up with this one. There's no doubt about it. One thing I want to mention as well, if you see sugar in products, like for example, healthy grains, spelt, kamut, quinoa, that's because there is sugar found naturally in grains. It's actually fructose, which has been given a bad rap lately because of a lot of sugar non-advocates that are looking at all the different sugars, including fructose, in saying that that's something that we're getting too much of. And perhaps we are, but it's coming probably from the added sugar, not the natural sugar that's found in all of these natural, organic, wholesome products like the spelt, the kamut, and the quinoa. And that's why you'll see 1 gram or 2 grams in organic rice, for example, and you scratch your head and say, well, I know they don't add the sugar to it. That just doesn't make sense. I got this off the organic shelf, so it can't have any added sugar. but it's the natural founding sugar that's giving it the 1 or 2 grams that you might see in. So just to clear that up, that's where it's coming from. It's natural, it's all good, and there isn't anything to worry about. So back to the macros here. We finished off the fats, the carbohydrates, the proteins. Those are your macros. Now, the DV or daily value also lists the micronutrients. Micronutrients, all your minerals and vitamins that are over here. So you can see that vitamin A, C, and also calcium, there's 0% of these minerals and vitamins in this food. So it's not high in vitamin A, C, or calcium. It has nothing, nada. Iron though, it's got 6%. So for somebody that's trying to increase their iron, you know, maybe they're borderline anemic or they are anemic, you know, popcorn would actually be a great food because you're getting a significant amount. It's between that 5-15, it's at 6, it's at the lower range, but it's still got some iron in it. So that's step number 2, understanding the daily value and using that far right column that, I'll be honest with you, I didn't used to use it. I used to get my calculator and do it the hard way. There is an easier way. They've already done it for us. It's a guideline. I want to clear that up right now too, that, you know, if you need a specific diet, you've got specific goals, maybe they're athletic goals or cosmetic goals, and you want to put a lot of focus and a lot of attention on your nutrition, this might not be for you. You know, this is just for people that want to maintain or increase their health, maybe lose a few pounds too, but it's definitely just a guideline. It's a ballpark. It's not finite math. You need to go to a registered dietitian to get a personalized meal plan and something really specific for you. And that might not be a bad idea because then you can get what I call the fuel blend, and it's always personalized. And that's when we break down our macros, you know, how much percent of carbs and proteins and fats are going to work for you. You know, what works for me is within that range that the DV works with, which my carbs are anywhere between 50 to 60%. And my fats and my proteins are always 25 to 30% of my daily calories or my daily intake. That's what works for me. That's a fuel blend, okay? If I need to lose a few pounds, then that'll change a little bit. You know, my protein and fat will probably come up a little bit and my carbs will come down a little bit, but I still have carbs. They might not be 60%, they might be 50% of my daily intake, for example. But again, back to the DV, it's a great general ballpark guideline that you can use to get in and out of the grocery store really quick and finally understand, you know, where is my food coming from? What is in this? And that's our responsibility. I really think that because, my friend, who's going to take care of that other than you? And I've learned that the hard way as well. I've learned that I need to take care of myself. So that means that I got to spend a little bit of time on the stuff, especially that is going into my body. But, you know, once you learn the quick and the easy way of doing things, which I'm showing you here today, then it's not such a burden. You know, you learn this, you start practicing it, and before you know it, it's really like snapping your fingers and you got this. You can really understand food labels. The third step, number 3, is the ingredients. So let's take a look at here. We've got popcorn, obviously. We've also got vegetable oil, salt, natural butter flavor, and color. So this is my thumbs up, thumbs down with these ingredients here. Popcorn, okay, it's corn, it's a grain. I need grains in my diet. I find that fuel blend really energizes me as long as I don't overdo it. So it's got my thumbs up there. Vegetable oil, I find with vegetable oil, I have to restrict it. You know, these are where our omega-6s are coming from, and I think that we're overdoing it on the omega-6s, and it's really throwing off our omega-6 and our omega-3 ratio, which really should be 2 to 1, 3 to 1, omega-6 to omega-3. But typically in our diets, it's probably 20 to 1 or 30 to 1 in some cases. So we need to beware of vegetable oil. It is everywhere, okay? It's in a lot of packaged and processed products. It gives it its taste. It helps preserve all of these products, but you know, in excessive amounts, it really makes me feel like crap, quite honestly. So that's going to get a thumbs down. Now, salt, Well, the salt, if we look at the micronutrient here, is 11%. It's between that 5 to 15 range I talked about. So, hey, not too bad. I'm not too worried about that. Natural butter flavor, thumbs up again with that. What about this? This is color. Now, it's artificial color. And how I know that is because it's a proprietary blend, and this is something that I need you to be aware of as well. Whenever you see flavor or color, that usually is a proprietary blend and is protected under law, meaning that they do not have to disclose all of the chemicals that make up that natural smoky bacon flavor, the chips that you're eating, for example. And same with the color as well. So that's going to get a thumbs down for me because I know that there's a lot more ingredients that they're not even listing, and probably most of those ingredients I wouldn't even be able to pronounce. And I have a little saying, if you can't pronounce it, denounce it. It's as simple as that. So in a lot of cases with food colorings and food additives and preservatives, they're chemicals. You won't be able to pronounce them. You won't be familiar with them, and that's really where you guys say thumbs down, or you're going to use it as a treat. You're going to use it in limited quantities and not overdo it. So that is the 3 ways that you can easily understand nutrition facts by reading food labels. Number 1, you got to know the serving size. That's very important, my friend. In this day of age, especially with finger foods like popcorn, we can definitely overconsume and go way beyond 3 cups, which is the serving size for this smart food here. The second thing is use that far right column, the DV percentages, and make sure you're between 5 and 15. Because sugar doesn't have a DV, you're going to have to use the high 5, low 5. All right, so high 5 on the fiber as a ratio compared to the sugar, which should be under 5 grams of sugar. So high 5, low 5, 5 to 15. If you can remember those 2 formulas, that makes the DV, or the daily value index, really easy to understand. You can fly through the labels and either put it back on the shelf or put it in your cart. The third thing is what's in this, the ingredients, and can you pronounce them and how many ingredients there are. I always use Tostitos, it's Doritos, and it's the Cool Ranch flavor, I think. And I couldn't believe it. First of all, I used to eat them, confession, and I always used to feel terrible afterwards. So it dawned on me to read the description, just don't judge the book by the cover, and flip it over, and I found that it had 32 ingredients in it. Now, this is a corn chip. Corn and a chip. That's it. 1 ingredient, yet it had 32 ingredients. So that really tells you, or tells me, why in that case I was feeling so terrible afterwards, just because of all of the artificial ingredients that were in a product like that. So I really hope this has helped. Until the next video, my friend, keep on inspiring to aspire.